Would you pray with me? About a month ago, O God, this night seemed very far away. And all of a sudden, we're here. The journey at a stable ends. Our eyes behold your answer to who we are, who we've become. In the midst of all the commercials, in the midst of all of the things that draw us away from the stable, you call us with angel voices. And in the dark of the night, invite us to light. So open our eyes and our hearts and our souls, O God, to see your light, to dwell in the dawning of a new day, who we come to know as Jesus. Open us to live that light in all that we are. Now may the words of my mouth and meditations of all our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O God, our strength, our salvation. Amen. When Nancy and I and the boys met Steve and Connie Ritchie, they were just members in another congregation. They were members of the first church I served. And Steve had the dubious honor, soon after our arriving, of becoming the consistory chair. He had to put up with the new pastor. Then one day, Steve invited me out to their farm. Woodlot, really. They live on a 40-acre tract in northern Indiana, just south of the little town of Culver where I served. And it was all trees when I went out there, except for the 3 acres where Connie and Steve's home and their shed were placed there on the southeast corner. The trees were mostly all about this tall. They had recently done a planting of pines and hardwoods. And through the center of that planting were old fence lines that ran, one that followed a creek. As those pines and hardwoods were growing, Steve mowed paths where they could walk out over this about 37 acres or so and go all over that woodlot. And he invited me to walk with him. It was walking that woodlot where we really became friends. You know, I grew up on a farm. I grew up on a dairy farm, and I always have sort of fancied myself as attuned to nature, attuned to the cycles of life on this earth. I was hunting by the time I was 12, had my first rifle and my first shotgun. But there was something different about this dedicated conservation area through which we walked, and later we would hunt on, but there was a peace about it. That was a quarter of a century ago. Now the trees are huge. And when we walk through it, there is this magnificent canopy. And we talk about all sorts of things in life. It wasn't unusual that when we would come out of the woods, it would be late afternoon, early evening, and the sun would have been setting, most times set, and we would stop and look at the sky. And for those of you who don't live near night lights, for God's sakes, don't ever get them. They create light pollution, and I know that there's safety things that go on with all of that, but we have sacrificed the night. But there, we'd walk out and just look up, and you could see the Milky Way and all of the constellations. And the deeper you look into the night sky, the more insignificant you really become. Which makes all the more significant what God does in sending Jesus to us. That God would so love folks like you and me. That God would send the only Son. That in the nighttime of our living, God would come to us with a light that could not be ignored and that could not be outshone by some night light, some dusk to dawn light. He comes to us in a light that draws our eye. Now, I suspect, were truth to be told, most of us are here because we have some sort of night through which we walk at one time or another. And there is some part of us that desperately needs to see that light, that needs to see that dawning of a new day. And we wonder, in fact, what kind of a child it is that would inspire a light that would shine and draw our attention. Because does God really understand the darkness through which we walk? Does God understand the darkness of Newtown, Connecticut? Does God speak to and shine into the moments of devastation when IEDs go off along a road in some distant land, or when some sniper thinks it sport to shoot at people in a mall? Does God know the depth of darkness that overshadows the soul when you realize that you've been diagnosed with something that will be life-altering and in some cases even life-ending? Does God know the darkness of a parent whose child is hurting or dying? That's the good news of the gospel. That's the good news of this story, I think. When in the midst of our darkness, in the midst of our journey, we look up and we see a light. We see starlight shining into that darkness and opening our eyes to see relief and love and care and peace and patience in ways that we could have never imagined. God does not eliminate the darkness. God shines into it. God provides a new way of seeing in the midst of it. And that one comes to us not as some big, profound bang, but as a humble little child that requires us not just to look and assume that He'll do everything, but to trust, to have faith, to hold on, to believe. The scientists tell us that all of this that was recorded in the Bible probably didn't happen the way it's recorded. Well, that's okay. That's what they want to believe. But I believe it happens exactly that way, not just 2,000 years ago, but every day, every time a parent folds her hands and says, "I need you right now, Lord. I need you right now in the midst of what I'm doing." Every time a community is shattered by violence, every time a nation imposes its will on another, every time some racial epithet is spoken, every time that some child says Mommy or Daddy or Grandpa or Grandma, and there's no answer. That light comes down from the very presence of God to show us that God is with us. We are not alone and never will be. It is God's heart who was there before we ever could imagine life as we know it, and it will be God's presence who will be there after. This is the good news of this baby born in Bethlehem. And this Christmas, my friend gets to see that face to face. He gets to see in light what we only know in darkness. He gets to see in wholeness what we only know in part. The darkness through which he journeyed with pancreatic cancer was but for a moment. This life that God gives to us in this Christ child is forever. And we are invited to that joy. That's what makes Christmas so incredible. It's about giving beyond our own self's need. It's about giving with the heart of God. That everybody know the light. That's my prayer for you this Christmas night. That it's not a matter of questioning, well, what child is this? It's a matter of saying, what a child this is. What a light this is. What a day this is. What an amazing life this is, this God who comes to us. May you claim it and may you live it. May you see it. Not just this night. Not just tomorrow. But always. Thanks be to God. Amen. Let us enter into a season of prayer, beginning with a time of silent, personal prayer.